Today is the day we have to change the oil. It's been about 35 hours since the last oil change, and I like to keep it changed every 6 months or 35 hours of flight time.
First we begin by removing all the cowling screws. I use a power drill to get the screws out, it goes a little bit faster. Moving the prop to get to the inside screws. And the outside screws are just quarter turn. Before removing the lower cowling, you have to disconnect the landing and taxi lights. There are 3 wires, landing, taxi and ground. The next step is to remove the air filter. 4 screws on the housing. And the air filter itself uses 4 quarter turn screws in the corners. They're Phillips head screws. The last step before you can remove the lower cowling is to disconnect the air intake hose, and that's done by unscrewing the 2 screws, one at the top and one at the bottom. The hose didn't go onto the quick drain valve very easily. It was cold out and the hose was stiff.
Whoa, whoa, you come out, bro. Shit.
So while I was trying to go hold it on there, I didn't pay attention. As you saw, I spilled a little bit of oil. But since the oil was warm and it warmed up the hose, I can at least slide the hose onto the quick drain valve now.
Not soft enough enough.
Gotta go clean up.
What? It's soft, the hose is soft enough that I can flip it off.
Next step is to remove the oil filter. First step is to cut the safety wire, and then you just put a cup down at the drip pan, and put your wrench on it and loosen the oil filter. I'm wrapping the safety wire around so I can spin the oil filter off a little bit easier. I almost filled a cup full of oil that was left in the oil filter. It's good to have a helper. Now that the oil filter is off, we're going to move on to the oil strainer. Before we can get to the oil strainer, we have to remove the safety wire, and then we take an 1.5-inch wrench and loosen the nut. Just put a cup underneath in case there's any oil left, and pull the nut out of the strainer, and then inspect the strainer for any metal pieces. The metal pieces will be caught in the strainer before the filter. Those are the bigger chunks. You really don't want to find anything in there, or probably time to start rebuilding your engine. So it's time to reassemble, but before you reassemble, wash the strainer I just rinse it out in a little bit of avgas and then put it back together. The nut has a crush washer, so first I'll finger tighten it, and then I'll take that 1.5-inch wrench and go about 90 degrees past it. You really don't want to over tighten it or crack the oil pan or anything like that. Next, you want to get the filter ready. That means labeling it with the date and end number and hours. And you put Dow Corning DC4 on the gasket to prevent it from seizing up. So here's the oil filter with the Dow Corning applied, and you just screw it back onto the oil filter housing. Once it's hand tight, we're going to take a torque wrench, and the torque spec for the filter is 16 to 18 foot-pound. So I typically set my wrench for 17 pounds and pull on it until it clicks, and that's good. On to safety wiring. In aviation, most components are safety wired to prevent them from vibrating loose. You don't want the oil filter to come off in flight, lose all the oil. It's not like you can just put on your gases and pull off the side of the road and wait for AAA to show up. So the way I safety wire is just pull plenty of safety wire through and then estimate the length from the filter to the nut with the holes in them. I usually go a little bit longer, put my twists on it, and then untwist just the last few turns to get it nice and tight. You don't want the safety wire to have any play, or it defeats the purpose of holding the device, in this case the filter, in place. I think this gets a little bit easier with practice. I've probably done about 3 to 4 oil changes myself on this plane now, and it's getting a little bit easier. I don't do a lot of safety wiring. I think that's a little bit more art than science. So I'm twisting it here, trying to find the right length. Now that looks about right. Slide it through. And then put the last twists on it. Couple pulls on the twisting pliers, and that's good. Cut off the excess, and we're done. So once we're done with the filter, we also have to safety wire the strainer plug. Same process. Feed the wire through, estimate the length, put your twists in, make your final connection, twist again, and cut off the excess. Before we add the oil, we have to make sure we close the quick drain plug, and one final inspection on the filter. Make sure it's safety wired okay, it checks out okay, and we can go do a run-up test. So the point of this test is to run the engine, make sure oil pressure goes up, checks out okay, and then walk around all the components, check the components, to make sure there's no leaks. So check by the filter, check by the strainer plug, make sure nothing came loose. And in my case, everything checked out okay, so we could push the plane back into the hangar. Now reassembly, everything in reverse order and how we took it apart. And we start with the lower cowling. And then we reconnect the air intake duct, followed by the air filter. Reconnect the taxi and landing lights. Cable time. Top cowling goes on. And almost done. Thanks Hob for staying and helping out. This tool is an oil filter cutter. You use it to cut open the oil filter so you can inspect it for any metal debris. Once you pull the filter element out, look inside the canister and see if you find any metal chunks inside. None were found. Then you take an X-Acto knife and cut around the filter element to get the paper element out. So this is what that looks like without the paper element. Lastly, inspect the paper for any foreign objects. And if everything checks out okay, don't forget to sign your logbook with all the important information that you need to record. If you enjoyed this video, press the like button, leave me your comments, and don't forget to subscribe.